All right, so what you're about to skip to is why I had to re-record this intro. Somehow the intro that I did live got erased. I don't know how, but what you're about to skip to is me talking about in response to the video we're watching, which is from Inspiring Philosophy, and it's talking about Jesus's verses when he tells his disciples, "Seek and you will find, ask and you will receive." Those verses in Mark and Luke. So you're gonna jump to that. I'm gonna be kind of in the middle of a thought, but I just wanted to catch you guys up on that. All right, let you go. All right, had to re-record this part for some reason. I hit the stop record. That's just what I was used to. But anyways, what I was saying is, how many of you in Sunday school, young child, heard this verse and you were just so excited to go home and get anything you wanted? Just pray for it and it's given to you. Give me a thumbs up on this video if you remember anything like that when you were a child, whether you're a Christian right now or not any longer. I'm just curious if you had that same experience. All right, let's continue.
So much faith, and those things just didn't happen. If you're a Christian and you've ever prayed in Jesus' name and those things didn't happen, why don't you consider Jesus a liar?
All things for which you pray, they will be granted you. The guarantee is outright. If one asks, one receives. The fact that Jesus' prayer-related guarantees are outright and unqualified aggravates the problem of unanswered prayer.
But as it typically is with issues like this, we cannot interpret the Bible as if it was written with our cultural expectations in mind. Jesus' statement.
I stopped recording again. I just wanted to stop this real fast because he just said something that was pretty interesting. Oh, okay. We can't interpret the Bible through our own modern day lens. I could kind of stop the conversation right here and ask Mr. Inspiring Philosophy, then why do you use that same logic but flip the words and say we have to actually look at this through our modern minds, because it's speaking to us now? As an example would be how in the Bible, in the Gospels, I think it's the later Gospels that actually say that, hey, this time is nearer. Almost, and I do believe that they all believed that the end was near. So with that one, it's like, no, you got to put on your modern lens and realize that this message was for us. But in this one, all of a sudden, you're flipping it and saying like, no, we can't think of it from our modern lens. It's just funny how everything always has to flip-flop when you have to hold on to something so strong, whether it's true or not, because it's so ingrained in you that you feel broken if you don't defend it.
As if we could demand anything from God that we desire, and the biblical context demonstrates this. Let's first look at another passage in Mark. In chapter 6, we read of John the Baptist being beheaded at Herod's birthday banquet. Before this happened, Herodias' daughter danced for Herod and his guests, and Herod was so pleased that he said, "Whatever you ask, I will give you, up to half of my kingdom." The question we may be tempted to ask is, why didn't she immediately start drawing up borders of her new kingdom, and instead only asked for John's head? Why not take half the kingdom if that was a literal offer? Because it went without being said that it was hyperbolic, not literal. As Walter Welzel and Mark Strauss say, the words "up to half my kingdom" may have been a kind of proverbial way of expressing open-handed generosity and were not to be taken literally. As they note, we find similar language in the Hebrew Bible. Offering half of one's kingdom was an expression which meant that a person wanted to bestow a generous gift. But it came with the understanding that the gift had to be within reason. They could not actually expect half of the kingdom. A similar meaning was understood in the culture when
Okay. I mean, he's got some reasonable answers to this, but of course, this is the only answer you can have for it. You have to say the words don't mean words, and that is almost always going to be your first defense when you really have no factual backing of any kind. We don't know what these people meant because we can't talk to them. So the only thing we can do is actually inject our subjective thoughts and our modern day thinking into the text. And how you're going to use that information that we have just depends on what you want the verses to say. It's so obvious because I can meet this guy's counterpart that's totally against the Bible, and he will be able to speak in the same kind of reasonable fashion, and you'll be like, yeah, see, he's obviously saying ask and you will receive. Tongue twister there. Ask and you will receive. That is what it's saying. It's the literal words. And then of course, if you don't want it to mean that, you can find it. And it's because it's coming from you. Of course you can find it. There's no objective truth to this because we can't know what they said. It's going to be all of our feelings and whatever your preconceptions are for the most part. I find it interesting that even some of these things I can believe in personally, but I can also question the hell out of them. So, I don't know. Let's go.
It came to Jesus' statements that we could ask for anything and it would be given to us. Given that Jesus is king, his statements were understood with the same hyperbolic meaning of a king granting favor to his loyal followers. It is not that Jesus was claiming he was a genie and he would grant our every wish. He was saying that as our king, we, his disciples, can ask for anything that would be in accord with his will. This, of course, makes sense with the teaching style of Jesus.
I just want to say that is the proof right there. You see how he injected what he would do or what he believes he's a modern day man. And if you gave this same question to an ancient man, the answers would be drastically different. And this inspiring philosophy guy would disagree with that ancient man, by the way. So that's something to really think about that. And that ancient man would say he's closer to God and closer to Jesus and knows what Jesus would want. Inspiring philosophy would say, no, wait, I know what Jesus meant. You didn't have the information that I have now. So they would be arguing with each other while telling each other that they are the true Christians. Amazing.
As he often spoke in hyperbolic language, as James T. O'Connor said, Jesus often spoke in hyperbolic language, which very few would interpret as being his final or full word on an issue. No one says Jesus was speaking literally when he said we need to get the log out of our own eye, or that the Pharisees were straining a gnat and swallowing a camel, or that we would always have to give up our clothing if someone demanded it.
I mean, once again, it's how you can just play on the words, man. You can do it. Let's read this. You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye. Yes, and you're right. That totally, we can see that's freaking metaphor. But there's something about it that it's a metaphor. And I don't know. I'm probably not. Maybe I'm not educated enough to actually like decipher why this is obviously a metaphor. And if somebody is good at those things, please comment for me. You can speak for me. But there's something about this that you can just tell the person's not being literal. The next one, you blind guide, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel. That too, right? You can just tell it's a metaphor. We don't have to read the next one, but when you're asking Jesus, that's telling, and Jesus, I don't know if Jesus really did say he was the Son of God, to be honest. I think that was put in after, but let's just go with it. Jesus is telling you that he is the Son of God. and telling you things that are to come and to be, and telling these future, talking about heaven, all of this. And you ask a direct question and Jesus tells you, just ask and it will be given. You're literally thinking he's meaning that. And if Jesus wasn't meaning that, it would sound like one of these. I don't know. It would sound like this. That is very straightforward, direct English. Seek and you will find. Ask and it will be received. Like, that's like literal. And even against what inspiring philosophy was saying, when you're a child, you don't ask for anything that's like too crazy. Or even after that, you learn very quickly. You don't see things popping up if you ask for $1 million or something like that. So what do? You lower your wish, right? Okay, Jesus, I don't know, can I just feel happy? Right? Like, eventually you would get to that point that you would just ask for something that's like super simple, right? So you should be able to ask to be happy, right? And it should just be given. It shouldn't take a lot for that, right? I don't know. I believe so. I think anyone, if you're going to ask for anything, you should be able to ask for just the feeling of happiness. All right, let's go.
These are hyperbolic statements meant to drive home a deeper meaning. With the last one, Jesus is saying that we should make an effort to be generous and go above and beyond what is required. It isn't a command to always be taken advantage of. If we look at the full context in Mark and the parallel passage in Matthew, we see hyperbolic language and imagery that was typical for Jesus. For example, he said, "Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, 'Be taken up and thrown into the sea,' and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him."
Boom. Perfect example. I'm glad that came up because, let me squish myself here. This one's obvious. I don't know what it is about it. Please tell me if you're like, what is this, like an English major or no, I don't know how to read into these things. It's just obviously a metaphor. You can tell there's something about the sentence structure that it's metaphor. It's telling you it's a metaphor. If you know the language. Maybe translations were wrong back when they were turning this into Greek, not when they were going into Greek, right? Maybe Jesus said something differently. It's just translated wrong, but that would go into a lot of my problems with the Bible and why it was just probably written by man. Is word of mouth to text, word of mouth for what, at least 40, 50 years, and then somebody finally decides to write it down. There is just no possible way that everything that's supposed to be in here is in here, and that's even granting that all the stories are true. Let's not even get into how a lot of these stories are ridiculous. So yeah, I just rambled a little bit, but let's go.
Donald Hagner notes this is hyperbolic. Jesus wasn't saying that having faith means one is like a Jedi from Star Wars, and that one can move objects with their mind. Only that having faith in God will allow us to do great things. Jesus does not offer his disciples magical powers to do whatever they please, or to perform extraordinary feats for their own sake, such as the withering of a fig tree. All must be related to the purpose of God that is in the process of being realized. Hagner brings up a good point with his.
Cool. Like I said, we can go with that, man. God wants everybody to be happy, right? At least sometimes, right? There are things that we can ask for right now all together that are definitely should be towards God's will. But you know what's going to happen? Once we all ask for it and nothing happens, we're going to get blamed. We didn't have enough faith. That's what we're going to be told. It's our fault. So that's kind of sad.
His last statement. Prayer is meant to be about the purpose of God. It is not, as many assume, a wish list we bring to God for fulfilling all our desires. Prayer was and still is mostly about submitting to God and His will. If one prays to God, they are assuming His will is relevant to the topic at hand. After all, we are coming to Him for guidance, so His will should be front and center. It is also important to notice that Jesus isn't telling this to just anyone, but to His disciples, people who have already submitted to His will, and therefore are expected to ask for things that are in line with the will of God. As Charles Quarles says, although 21:22.
I know I'm stopping this a lot, but I want to stop it a lot. I don't want us to just sit here and just listen to this. Because what he said is another one of my issues with the Bible and our Bible apologetics, right? This isn't actually the Bible that's saying these things. This is our own opinions, right? Our modern day opinions on this. And that's why throughout the centuries, it's changed on what the Bible is interpreted as. And it's so obvious if you actually just do the research yourself and just go back and look at what certain leaders said the Bible meant or certain verses meant, you can just see it changing with the time. This obviously has changed with the times. There was nothing ever cement here. Even the stories about Jesus being God came later on. True or not, like I said, this is kind of irrelevant if it's true or not, because we actually can't prove it. No one can prove those kind of things. They're not provable. So they're almost pointless to talk about. So we just kind of got to look at them as like, it possibly can be not right, guys, too. If you believe it, you have to also understand that it can be wrong. These people could have lied. Just like you're telling others that, hey, these people told the truth. Neither of you were there. So you also have to admit that your side could be wrong. And a lot of these stories were made up, whether Jesus was a real man or not. I feel like I missed my point on that, but good enough speech. Keep going.
Might seem like a blanket promise that God will do whatever His disciples ask. The qualifier in prayer reminds the reader of Jesus' teaching about prayer in 6:5-15, in which the disciple is to ask that God's name be regarded as holy, His kingdom arrive, His will be done, and so forth. Thus, Jesus' earlier teaching about the prayer of the true disciple should prevent modern exploitation of the passage to promote a conception of God as a genie in a bottle who must fulfill all our wishes. It is like if I were to go to a judge and ask for something. The assumption would be that he would only grant what the law could allow. It would make no sense to ask for permission from a judge to sell illegal drugs. Even if a judge emailed me and said I could come to the courthouse and ask for anything, the obvious
Okay, I wanted to say something before he finished, because I haven't heard this. To me, he's proving the point, right? God is God. Jesus was God, right? So I actually have a very huge, what should I say? I have huge options. Like, I had huge options. I almost can ask for anything from the perspective of a person, right? Like, that's pretty crazy. And he's comparing it to a judge. And yes, you would ask the judge for things you know the judge or what you have been taught from the system that the judge can offer. So it's the same thing with the Bible. You won't even get to that verse really and believe it would work unless you've kind of read through the Bible and you kind of understand what would need to be asked. So I doubt there's really people asking for $1 billion and really believing that this would work. The people that are believing that this passage means what it means are people that truly feel it and truly believe. And how disappointed are a lot of these people? How disappointed are the mothers of starving children, or the children of dying parents, or the parents of dying children, when they're sitting there asking for these things and they're just told, for the most part, it's God's will.
Understanding would be that I could ask for anything that the law would allow. Likewise, When we pray to God, it should come with the assumption He will only grant us things that can accord with His will. Jesus did not give us a license to literally ask for anything. We even see this explicitly stated in 1 John 5. And this is the confidence that we have toward Him, that if we ask for anything according to His will, He hears us. Notice the verse says we can ask for anything according to His will. In Jesus' time, it was understood prayer was an act of submission to God. You wouldn't ask for literally anything, but for things that align with God's will. For example, you may ask for a new job or a new house, but what you're really asking is, please let such a reality be your will, God. Prayer is supposed to come with the knowledge that since God is morally perfect, He will only grant such a thing if it increases goodness and virtue and brings Him glory.
I feel like it's really stupid when you start saying stuff that would be important to God or not be important to God. My perspective on it is, how could any of this be important to God? Can we remember that God is everything? God has been the only thing forever. God is perfect. How could God care about any of these things, right? And to say God cares means God doesn't care about certain things, or does God care about everything? Which is, it's kind of weird, because there's obviously parts where God seems to care about something over the other, which means there's like a gradient of what God cares about, which means God changes, which kind of goes against the whole perfection. Okay.
Notice in Matthew 7:10, we see Jesus say, "If you then who are evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask Him?" Notice the verse is qualified by saying, God will only give good things, which was understood to be things that brought about the will of God. A new house might seem like a good thing for you, but perhaps God knows it will make you greedy.
So this just made me think of a verse, because he is actually lying here, or he doesn't know, because in the Bible, I will look up the story and I'll post it up here, because I'm not like a scholar. I just remember this story in the Bible. There's a story in the Bible where someone, and I'm going to post it on here. I'm going to stamp it on here, asked to win a battle. And the only way they could win a battle was by sacrificing the first thing that they came out of their house. I'm going to figure out who it is. I don't know if it's Jacob or not, but like I said, you'll see it, and we'll see it. So that's God doing something. God said no sacrifices, right? No human sacrifices. But then God agrees that, God knowing, by the way, that it was going to be one of His children that came out, God agreed to that. That's God's will? Okay. What does good mean at that point then? That's what we need to be answering here.
Will not grant such a request, because it ultimately is not good. Prayer presupposes that one is committed to God's will and seeing it done. Craig Keener notes that only a small number of sages were considered pious enough to ask God for anything, as they would have asked for things in line with God's will. Such a call to believing prayer supposes a heart of piety submitted to God's will. Although Jesus states the promise graphically, He implicitly addresses only disciples, who will seek the good of God's kingdom and provision for their basic needs. Jesus' promise is for the righteous, people who share kingdom values in 6:19-34, who ask God to supply their basic needs and request concerning the kingdom. We see this in how Jesus taught His disciples to pray. Notice it's not for magical powers, wealth, or earthly power, but daily sustenance, avoiding temptation, and for His will to be done. If one is praying to God, one is praying for things that accord to His will, not our own. So despite what skeptics claim,
look, no matter whatever prayer you're doing, it's going to be for your will. There's no way to pray and not be selfish in it, in a way. Just like there's no way to do anything and not have some kind of selfish thing to it. Even saving someone, you can be selfish in it. Or there's a portion of selfish in it because it has to make you feel good. It has to so it's just, it's one of those things where it's no, it's not like that. I think you're just using words but not really using them the correct way. Yeah. And it's funny to me, the only time we compare God to us is when we need God, when there's something bad in the Bible. Or something that, contradicts in the Bible. Maybe that's better. When there's something that contradicts in the Bible, it seems that now we do our comparisons to humans. But when it's something great in the Bible, it's just like, no, that is God. It's God. That's what it says. Words mean words. And then words don't mean words when it doesn't look right. Let's finish this.
Jesus did not lie because they do not understand the purpose of prayer. These statements were given in Jesus' typical hyperbolic language and are calls to align ourselves with the will of God. Faith and prayer are not magical powers, but ways to bring us closer to God in His way of thinking. If you want to know more about the purpose of prayer, see this video we have on our channel. You made it to the end of this video.
All right, we did make it to the end. Interesting video. I've heard Inspiring Philosophy before. I actually used to listen to him quite a bit when I was taking a deeper dive into scriptures and the Bible story in total. So I do remember watching a lot of his videos, and he's very interesting. He speaks very well. Some of the stuff I've always questioned because it just didn't make sense. But overall, I will say from what I get from those verses is Jesus is saying, ask. And what I got out of it, even a long time ago, was it was like you just really had to believe, right? Not necessarily what you're asking for, but you just had to believe. And if you truly believed, you would only ask for things that would be granted, because otherwise you wouldn't be asking because you don't even really believe. So it's like a little weird little loop that you get in to where you're only asking for good things because you believe, and in believing in Jesus makes you ask for good things. And yeah, so I would love to hear if anyone else has any stories about these two verses in Matthew and Luke. And we can talk about that in the comments section. I do plan to start doing some lives pretty soon. Maybe even tomorrow or something. We'll see how it goes. Even if I can get one person in there, be great. So I know I went way too long talking. I don't know who the hell has made it to the end of this video. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you very much. I know it's only going to be a few people. Thanks for watching, guys. Somebody's got to do it. Peace. Hope you guys enjoy. As always, leave your comments. I will reply. All right, let's see what this is about.
Jesus declared, "I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours." We find similar statements in Matthew and John. The problem is, I'm sure you can think of many things that you have asked for in prayer and have not received from God. But the verses suggest that we should be able to ask for anything and receive it. Non-Christians use these verses to claim Jesus is a liar.
When I was a Christian, I asked so many things in Jesus' name. I had faith.